A wealthy father, desperate to understand his estranged son, disguises himself as a homeless man and ventures into the world of the less fortunate. What he uncovers shakes him to his core. His son, once full of potential, now reveals a cruel and entitled nature, ignoring those in need and mocking their struggles. But the father isn't ready to give up on him. In a dramatic confrontation, the truth comes to light, leaving the son shocked and ashamed. This isn't just a story of wealth or status, it's a tale of redemption, self-discovery, and the enduring bond between a father and son. Will the son rise above his wickedness and embrace compassion, or is it too late to change? The cold wind whipped against the man's face as he sat on the bench near the bustling city square. Dressed in tattered clothes, a woolen cap pulled low over his face, and a scruffy coat draped over his shoulders, Michael Thompson blended into the crowd of homeless individuals who frequented the area. He had carefully orchestrated this disguise to remain unrecognizable. For years, Michael had been one of the wealthiest men in the city, running a multi-million-dollar real estate empire. But wealth had its price, and for Michael, it was his growing estrangement from his only son, Ethan. Ethan, 28, had always been a promising young man. With access to the finest education and all the privileges his father's fortune could provide, he seemed destined for greatness. But in recent years, Michael had noticed a change in his son. Ethan had become distant, entitled, and cold-hearted. Concerned about his son's moral compass, Michael devised a plan. He would pose as a homeless man and see firsthand how Ethan treated those less fortunate. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a desperate attempt to understand the man his son had become. Michael spent days observing his son from afar. He stationed himself outside Ethan's favorite coffee shop and even lingered near the entrance to the corporate building where Ethan worked as a junior executive. What Michael witnessed during those days filled him with a mix of pride and heartbreak. Ethan was charming and poised in public, commanding respect from colleagues and strangers alike. But something was missing, a sense of compassion. Ethan walked past the homeless people in his path, as if they were invisible. He never stopped to offer help or even acknowledge their existence. The breaking point came one afternoon when Michael, in his homeless disguise, decided to approach Ethan directly. He shuffled toward him as Ethan exited the coffee shop, a steaming cup of espresso in hand, and his designer briefcase slung over his shoulder. "Excuse me, sir," Michael said, his voice hoarse and trembling. "Could you spare some change for a meal?" Ethan froze for a moment, his expression unreadable. He looked at Michael, his eyes scanning the man's worn-out clothes and dirt-smudged face. "I don't carry cash," Ethan replied curtly, stepping around him without a second glance. Michael's heart sank. He wasn't expecting a warm embrace or instant recognition, but the cold dismissal stung deeply. He realized then that his son had grown up in a bubble of privilege, oblivious to the struggles of others. But Michael wasn't ready to give up. Over the next few days, Michael became a regular fixture in the areas Ethan frequented. He noticed a troubling pattern. Ethan wasn't just indifferent to the homeless. He actively avoided them. One evening, Michael overheard a conversation between Ethan and a group of his friends. They were laughing and joking about how lazy homeless people were, claiming they brought their misfortune upon themselves. Ethan's voice carried above the others, filled with disdain. "They just sit there all day, expecting handouts," Ethan said. "If they put half as much effort into finding a job as they do begging, they wouldn't be in this situation." Michael clenched his fists, his heart pounding with anger and disappointment. How could his own son, raised in a home that emphasized kindness and generosity, hold such callous views? It was then that Michael decided to confront Ethan, but not as his father. The following morning, Michael approached Ethan again, this time with a more direct request. "Please, sir," he said, his voice filled with desperation. "I haven't eaten in days. Just a sandwich or anything you can spare." Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced around, embarrassed by the attention the exchange was drawing. "I already told you, I don't carry cash," Ethan snapped. Then, lowering his voice, he added, "Stop harassing people. Maybe if you cleaned yourself up, someone would help you." Michael stared at his son, his heart breaking all over again. He wanted to shout, to reveal his identity, and demand an explanation for Ethan's cruelty, but he held back. This wasn't the time or place. That night, Michael returned to his mansion, shedding his disguise and reflecting on what he had witnessed. He realized that Ethan's behavior wasn't entirely his fault. Michael had provided his son with every material comfort, but had failed to instill the values that truly mattered. He had been too focused on building his empire to notice the cracks forming in his relationship with Ethan. Determined to take action, Michael invited Ethan to dinner at the mansion the next evening. Ethan arrived, impeccably dressed and radiating confidence. He greeted his father with a firm handshake, unaware of the storm brewing beneath Michael's calm exterior. As they sat down to eat, Michael broached the subject carefully. "Ethan, have you ever thought about the people you see on the streets? The homeless?" Ethan frowned, clearly puzzled by the sudden shift in conversation. "Not really," he admitted. "Why?" Michael took a deep breath. "Because I've been spending time among them recently," he said. "I wanted to understand their struggles firsthand." Ethan's fork paused midair. "What are you talking about, Dad? You're a billionaire. What could you possibly know about being homeless?" Michael leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "More than you think. I've been living as one of them for the past week, watching, observing. And what I saw from you," his voice faltered, heavy with emotion, "it broke my heart." Ethan's face flushed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I saw how you treated me when I approached you as a homeless man," Michael said. "The way you dismissed me, the way you spoke about people like me to your friends." "Ethan, is this who you've become?" Ethan's eyes widened in shock as realization dawned. "That was you?" he whispered. "Yes," Michael replied, "and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to witness. I raised you to be better than this, to have compassion for others. Where did I go wrong?" Ethan was silent, his expression a mix of anger, shame, and confusion. "You tricked me," he said finally. "You set me up to fail." "I didn't set you up," Michael countered. "I gave you an opportunity to show kindness, and you failed on your own. But this isn't about blame, Ethan. It's about understanding. The world doesn't revolve around wealth and status. It's about how we treat those who have nothing." Ethan stared at his father, his defenses crumbling under the weight of his words. For the first time in years, he saw not the powerful tycoon, but a father desperate to reconnect with his son and guide him back to the values that mattered. The conversation stretched late into the night, filled with raw honesty and reflection. By the end, Ethan promised to change. He didn't know how, but he was willing to try. The next morning, Michael took Ethan to a local shelter, introducing him to the people he had met during his week undercover. As Ethan listened to their stories, his perspective began to shift. He realized that homelessness wasn't a choice, but often the result of circumstances beyond control. Slowly, he started to see the humanity he had ignored for so long. In the weeks that followed, Ethan became a regular volunteer at the shelter, helping to organize meals and raise funds. His transformation wasn't immediate or easy, but it was genuine. And for Michael, it was proof that it was never too late to right the wrongs of the past. Their bond, once strained by distance and misunderstanding, grew stronger with each passing day. Together, they worked to create programs that provided job training and housing for the homeless, using their wealth and influence to make a difference. In the end, Michael's gamble paid off. By pretending to be homeless, he didn't just uncover his son's flaws, he gave him the chance to become a better man.